The Olympiastadion, home to Bayern Munich from 1972 until 2005. It became a fortress where opponents seldom prospered. Further afield, the mid-70s saw Bayern Munich win the European Cup 3 years in succession. This golden era for the club signaled the power shift in European football, and Bayern Munich were the pride of a nation. In 1972, the West German national team became European champions for the first time. 2 years later, as hosts, they won the World Cup in Munich, and the foundations for both triumphs were laid at one club, Bayern Munich. Franz Beckenbauer was captain of both club and country. Gerd Müller was a phenomenal provider of goals. Paul Breitner thrillingly turned defense into attack, while at the heart of the defense was Hans-Georg Schwarzenbeck. Uli Hoeneß provided pace and power up front, and goalkeeper Sepp Maier was a never-dependable last line of defense.
It shouldn't be forgotten that from 1970 to 76, there were, I think, about 8 or 9 players who played all the time. 6 years, the same team. And this was obviously one of our strengths.
It was practically an identical team, a well-oiled unit. We all knew what the others would do on the pitch, and that was decisive.
Today, Bayern boasts a proud history, one established by those 6 internationals and their teammates who, in a few short years, helped the club emerge from relative obscurity to center stage.
Football thrives on tradition, and Bayern Munich has become so popular and has always had a huge fan base. The foundations were laid at the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s. Bayern weren't in the Bundesliga when it was born and had to gain promotion from the Regional League South.
In the 1963-64 season, Bayern missed out on such promotion. Defeat to eventual playoff group winners Borussia Neunkirchen proved decisive. But for many, defeat was a blessing in disguise.
We were the best team in that group, but we conspired to defeat ourselves. Thankfully, we didn't get promoted that year, and that gave our younger players like Sepp Maier more time to develop. They all had one more season in the regional league to gain more experience. And then in 1965, we gained promotion to the Bundesliga.
The following year, Bayern topped the regional league, but still had to get through a playoff stage. This time the outcome was very different. An 8-0 win away over tennis Borussia Berlin on the final day sealed Bayern's place in the Bundesliga for the first time. That triumphant season also witnessed the emergence of Gerd Müller and Franz Beckenbauer. They scored 33 and 16 goals respectively, and the seeds of future greatness had unmistakably been sown.
Gerd Müller is the most important German footballer in history. No one else. Without him, I would not be sitting here today, and Bayern would not be where they are today.
Pele was an exception, along with a couple of others. But Franz, the Kaiser as we called him, was really something special. Be it as a person, as a player, or as a teammate, he was simply an idol. And I doubt there will ever be a personality of the sport in Germany, even the world, who can compare to him.
Beckenbauer significantly enhanced the role of the libero or sweeper, and Gerd Müller was frequently the beneficiary.
You'll never find a nicer, more pleasant person than him, and in addition, he scored all the goals for us. Without Gerd Müller, we'd never have had the success that we enjoyed.
No one got past Franz. He was fast, just so fast, so no one got anywhere near him.
Bayern reached the final of the European Cup Winners' Cup in 1967, having won the West German Cup for the second time the previous season.
We were lucky in the fact that we were able to play the final in Nuremberg, which made it almost a home game for us. We were the outsiders, as we'd only been promoted the previous season.
The final against Rangers of Scotland was decided in extra time.
I was fortunate enough to score the goal in extra time that won us our first international trophy.
10 days later, they lifted their second consecutive domestic cup, and in 1969, Bayern became West German champions for the first time since 1932.
At the beginning of the 70s, we were a capable team, able to perform and old enough to be able to withstand the pressure. This is when the best period came around for Bayern, even though we'd become West German champions once already and won both the domestic cup and the Cup Winners' Cup. So we were already very successful, but we'd gained the right experience to really enjoy more success.
Crucial to that success was Udo Lattek, appointed manager in 1970.
He was a big motivator. He was well informed on tactics and could get the best out of every player. He was able to inspire us and get 100% effort out of every single one of us.
Udo Lattek came to us in 1970, and it turned out to be an ideal appointment. Lattek understood how to unite the team.
Bayern regained the league title in 1972. A campaign which included this 11-1 thrashing of Borussia Dortmund. They scored 101 goals in 34 games, with Gerd Müller contributing 40, a Bundesliga record.
Ever since I was a young boy, I was a goal scorer. In the national team, I had great players around me, and I always knew that when I got the ball, I'd score.
He had a nose for goal that's essential, and it's something that can't be taught. That was Gerd Müller. He could score with any part of his body.
The most important player for Bayern Munich was Gerd Müller. He wasn't the best footballer, but there is nobody in the world who managed to score goals like he did. And there never will be someone who plays the way Müller did.
Over 15 seasons, Müller scored 398 goals in 453 appearances and finished leading scorer in the Bundesliga on 7 occasions. But even he could not prevent European elimination in 1973 by Ajax, who went on to become continental champions for the 3rd time in a row. For the West
ahead in the German league, but that doesn't really mean much on the European stage. Okay, it meant success at home, but it counted for nothing in Europe. For that, a team first has to grow together and gain experience.
Well, we definitely did learn from them, as Ajax had the perfect team. They played at a very high tempo, and we realized that this was an area in which we had to improve.
Bayern did manage to retain their league title that season. Müller was the leading scorer once again with 36 goals. And the following season, they finally reached the European Cup final. This 3-0 home win over Hungary's Újpest Dózsa, clinching their place. Just 4 days before the final against Spaniards Atletico Madrid, Bayern completed a hat-trick of successive Bundesliga titles. But the champagne was put on ice.
We didn't celebrate at all. Obviously, we immediately began to focus on the final of the European Cup. And we said, okay, we'll celebrate winning the Bundesliga title after the European Cup final.
That match was played in the Belgian capital of Brussels, and it was Bayern's first appearance in a European Cup final. Though German supporters outnumbered their Spanish counterparts, on the pitch, the watchword was caution.
Both teams were playing very defensively. Nobody wanted to concede a goal, so both of us were just waiting to counter-attack.
The game finished goalless after 90 minutes and went into extra time. With just 6 minutes remaining, Atletico took the lead. Bayern's dream appeared to be over.
I think that something developed, or something was even born that day, that still exists at FC Bayern, never giving up, and a winning mentality.
Only a minute was left when Hans-Georg Schwarzenbeck tried his luck from distance.
It was a massive weight off our shoulders, a huge relief. We felt we had another chance. That was such an important goal in the sense that it gave us a psychological advantage.
48 hours later, the replay took place at the same venue. The demands of a long season were taking their toll.
We'd forced a replay, which nobody thought we would do, and that was the deciding factor. And I'll tell you, in the replay, we already knew
actually managed to play at all.
Hennes himself gave Bayern a half-time lead.
whoever took the lead had won the game, because their opponents had to push up and leave gaps in defence.
Gerd Müller doubled Bayern's advantage.
In the replay, I had one of my best games ever for Bayern. I set up the third goal for Gerd Müller, and it was easy. We didn't think it would be so straightforward.
Uli Hoeneß's second completed the rout, and Bayern Munich were champions of Europe for the first time.
In the replay, we won 4-0, perhaps our best game of the season, possibly the best game Bayern Munich has ever played.
4-0 in a final was, as we say in German, a Hausnummer, the real deal. It was a big achievement, and we were very proud. It was a great feeling.
Remarkably, the following day, Bayern had to play their final Bundesliga fixture of the season.
It was the first time that a German team had won that cup. We partied without sleeping and travelled to Mönchengladbach. We had a good meal, accompanied by a few beers, and then went out onto the pitch, and nobody was completely sober.
That much was clear. Borussia Mönchengladbach inflicted a 5-0 defeat on the newly crowned European champions. But it was a result quickly forgotten as Bayern celebrated their European Cup and Bundesliga double.
It was a dream come true. It was wonderful. In Munich, there was a feeling of euphoria that you couldn't comprehend. The main square, Marienplatz, and all the streets around it were crammed, so it was an incredible occasion for us.
Bayern's success was built upon a classic 4-4-2 formation. In goal, Sepp Maier made over 500 appearances for the club.
He dominated the box like no other goalkeeper, even in today's game. And for me, he was really the best in the world.
Ahead of him, Franz Beckenbauer was the heartbeat of the team, the sweeper who loved to go forward.
When Franz Beckenbauer got forward, it was my job to fall back into his position.
And Uli Hoeneß was the ideal foil for Gerd Müller up front.
Uli Hoeneß was particularly important for away games because he was outstanding on the counter-attack. He was very quick and knew where the goal was.
That summer, Hoeneß and 6 of his teammates helped West Germany to win the World Cup on home soil. Paul Breitner and Gerd Müller scored the goals that overcame the Netherlands in the final. Beckenbauer proudly lifted the trophy, but that success proved detrimental to Bayern.
I think after a season like that, logically, you're not going to be as fit for the next campaign, and maybe not even as motivated as you had been.
Their first match, a 6-0 defeat away to Kickers Offenbach, was a sign of things to come. Coach Udo Lattek was dismissed in January 1975 with the team labouring in 14th position after 17 games. He was replaced by Detmar Kramer, who cut short his spell in charge of the United States national team.
If Bayern aren't winning any titles, then usually the manager is the first one to be blamed. A team doesn't think too much about it. They accept the next manager and just carry on.
We had no chance of winning the league title. So it was at the beginning of February that a group of us decided, after we lost my first 3 games in charge, that we would try our utmost to win the European Cup.
And they were on course. Bayern stormed to the European Cup final once again. This 5-3 aggregate win over East Germany's Magdeburg, one of several impressive victories on the way. The final was held in Paris, and their opponents were Leeds United of England.
We were full of confidence, especially in the European Cup, and we were quietly confident that we could possibly beat Leeds United.
But Bayern lost their Swedish defender Björn Andersson early in the game.
We were very unlucky, because Andersson was severely injured after 2 minutes and had to be subbed. It was a nasty tackle.
Shortly afterwards, Beckenbauer appeared to bring down Leeds striker Alan Clark. Penalty claims were refused.
They were an experienced team. The same had happened to us before. If the referee doesn't award it, you just carry on playing and it's not a penalty.
The second half brought more controversy and more luck for the defending champions. Peter Lorimer thought he had put the English side ahead.
Leeds United scored a goal, which the referee disallowed for offside. It was a goal. It wasn't offside. But that often happens in football. You can't look back. You can be angry about it. You can be disappointed. But you can't let it affect you forever.
If the referee says it's not a goal, then I can't tell him it was. It wasn't a goal, and that's that.
Just 6 minutes later, Leeds' sense of injustice was further intensified.
It was a really nice pass from Connie Torstensson, and I ran onto it and was quicker than my marker, who'd left his man.
I thought, now we have won. If we were leading back in those days, it was rare that we would give away that lead easily. When we got the second goal, it felt bound to happen, and I was expecting it.
Gerd Müller's goal made it 2-0, and Bayern Munich retained their title of European champions.
At home, we were having trouble defeating an average Bundesliga team, going up that extra gear we needed. But on the international stage against the likes of Leeds United, we were a lot stronger.
To win the European Cup 2 years in a row was a special achievement, and so we were delighted, ecstatic.
You can't go out and party for a year and go around saying, I'm now a two-time European champion, or I'm a two-time Bundesliga winner. So there. No. You have to carry on. And I think that is why we were so successful.
But the following season began poorly. This 6-0 league defeat away to Eintracht Frankfurt was the kind of form that put them in 10th position after 17 games.
There was a lot in the media and the press, and it began to annoy us and get to us, because we ourselves didn't know why it was, and everything was put into question. Have they had too much success? Are they not hungry enough for more?
However, Bayern reached the final of the European Cup for the third consecutive season. In Glasgow, they faced Saint-Étienne of France, whom they'd eliminated at the semi-final stage the previous year.
They were actually the favourites because in their league they were clear at the top, whereas we were mid-table again. Because we hadn't played so well in the Bundesliga, our motivation was sky high. It was incredible because we knew that, just like Ajax had done before us, we could also win the European Cup for the third time in succession and get to keep the trophy. We had a bit of luck because they hit the bar.
The players told me, "Coach, don't worry. If we get to the final, we will win it." It was a confident team.
Gerd Müller was fouled about 25 metres out and a free kick was awarded. I was responsible for taking free kicks, and I didn't know where to place it. They set up a 6-man wall, and I said to Franz, there's only one option here. Knock it to me 1 or 2 metres to the side, because they'll charge out of the wall and block it. Otherwise, the defenders will close us down, and then there'll be no way of getting the ball through them. So he laid it across to me, and I banged it in.
We'd concentrated on practicing free kicks, and the goal we scored in the 1-0 victory was from a free kick, but not one of the ones we had worked on. Beckenbauer saw that the keeper was slightly out of position, laid the ball off to Roth, and said, "Hit it."
Roth's solitary strike was enough. Bayern had emulated Ajax by winning the European Cup in 3 successive seasons.
That was the icing on the cake. If you win the European Cup 3 times in a row, you get to keep it. That was the greatest thing for us. The party was never ending.
We were domestic champions 3 times in a row from 1972 onwards, and then we won the European Cup 3 times in a row in 1974, 75 and 76, and the national team won the European Championships in 1972 and the World Cup in 1974 with 6 Bayern players. I think it was the greatest time, not just for the national team, but also for Bayern Munich.
And 7 months later, Bayern were crowned champions of the world. They defeated Brazil's Cruzeiro, the champions of South America, 2-0 on aggregate to win the Intercontinental Cup.
Being crowned club champions of the world is like having another small crown put on top of your European Cup success. But that marked the end of Bayern Munich's golden era, as we went our separate ways. Franz went to New York, Gerd Müller was getting on a bit. Back then, Bayern's will to win was unbroken. Then all that changed, and the team fell apart a bit.
The golden era had to end, but beyond doubt greatness was achieved by Bayern Munich during those years. 8 domestic trophies, 3 European Cup wins in succession, and a world title. A big entry in football history.
It was only later that we realized what we'd accomplished, and that it simply wasn't an everyday achievement for a team to win the European Cup 3 times in a row.
We weren't friends. We really weren't. Well, maybe 1 or 2 of us were. But when we were together on the pitch, we knew exactly what we wanted.
We had a good mix of older, more experienced players and younger players. But they all shared the same will to win. Every single one of them sweated blood for the cause.
Beckenbauer, Müller, Hoeneß and Meyer, great names synonymous with Bayern Munich even today. Both club and country will be forever in debt to them.